Well, howdy, NewSpring. Everybody good? Hey, do me a favor before we even dive in today. You had a green and red coaster when you walked in. I'm going to need you to get that out for sermon illustration purposes. Going to go ahead and get you ready, all right? So go ahead, get that thing out. It is Christmas season, and most people here, if you're a shopper, have a favorite place to shop. How many of you got a favorite place to shop? Mine's online. How many of you would rather be set on fire than go shopping? Okay. How many of you would rather be set on fire than your wife go shopping? Anybody? Yeah. Okay. Got that. A few of that. Most of us will probably say we have a favorite place to shop, place to vacation, beach. Anybody beach people? Yeah. Mountain people? Whatever's on hotel.com people. And then, like me, if you're a foodie, I've got a favorite place to eat. Most of us, some of us have favorite place to eat. Some of us, and I'm not talking about grandma's house or a home-cooked meal. I'm talking about a favorite restaurant. Now, if you were to ask me what's my favorite restaurant locally, I've got an answer. But my favorite restaurant in the world, if I could go to any restaurant and you're buying, that's key, and you're buying, my favorite restaurant in the world is a restaurant called Fogo de Chão. Now, some people say Fogo de Chão. They serve chow, but it's not chow. It's Fogo de Chão. It is a Brazilian steakhouse. There's about 15 or 20 nationally, and there's some in Brazil. Now, when I say Brazilian steakhouse, some of you would go, oh, yeah. I've eaten at a Brazilian steakhouse. It's just like Fogo de Chão. Other Brazilian steakhouses is kind of like kissing your cousin, which for some, anyway, For Fogo de Chão is like kissing a supermodel, all right? That's the best way I can think of to describe it. This restaurant is hands down my favorite restaurant in the world. Now, I would have never known about this restaurant had it not been for a really good friend of mine named Will. Will and I established a friendship several years ago, and we discovered that we have food in common. We both love food, okay? So he's telling me about this restaurant in Atlanta. Oh, you got to go eat there. You got to go eat there. You got to go eat there. And I'm like, yeah, I might do that sometime. Now, if you're from the north and you're a transplant here to the south, it's important to understand that when a southerner tells you I might do that sometime, it means I'm never going to do it, and I wish you'd stop talking about it. But that's our nice way of saying, because we're nice here for the most part, I might do that sometime. And so Will would tell me about it. Yeah, man, I might do that sometime. And I would tell Lucretia, I think he's lost his mind. I'm not driving 2 hours to eat at a restaurant. So one day he tricked me, is what he did. He called me. He said, hey, man, what are you doing Saturday from like 3 o'clock on? Do you have any plans? And I said, I have no plans, man. He's like, you sure? I was like, I'm positive. He said, good. I'm taking you to Fogo de Chão. And when I hung up, I told Lucretia, I was like, I don't like that. He tricked me. He asked me, first of all, did I have plans? And he tricked me into it. And so I was like, well, I got to go. I told him I'd go, and, we'll drive, So he picked me up in Anderson. He drove me to Atlanta to Fogo de Chão. And what I experienced in that restaurant was the most glorious thing that's ever happened in my life. First of all, when you walk in, there's a humongous salad bar. So even if you're a vegan, you would love this place. You can eat artichoke hearts and asparagus for the rest of your life, okay? I'm not a vegan. I think God made cows out of meat because he wanted us to eat them, and so I'm pursuing that with all my heart. And so, but you got a salad bar, and you walk, and you sit down at the table. Now, I want everybody to take their coaster. Everybody got your coaster? And put it with the red side facing towards you. Everybody got it? Everybody ever campus red side? Now, I want you to take the coaster and just flip it from red to green. Just turn it over. Now, see, nothing really happened to you when you did that. But if you had been in Fogo de Chão, what happens to you is when you turn it from red to green, people descend on you with skewers of meat. I'm talking ribs. I'm talking bacon wrap filet. I'm talking filet mignon. They got some chicken. They got some, Parmesan encrusted pork. Hello. It is the meat Olympics. You could eat so much meat that you sweat gristle by the time you walk out of there. And as long as you got it on green, everybody still on green? As long as you got it on green, they're going to serve you stuff, okay? Now, if you were to turn it back over to red, everybody turn it back over to red, that means I want you to stop. But I turn mine to green, and then I take a hammer and nail it to the table because I don't want them to stop bringing me the good stuff. You see what I'm saying? The most important thing at Fogo de Show is going from red to green. Now, it's amazing when I started thinking about it. In fact, I thought about this particular message in Fogo de Show. I call it field research. I was doing a little field research, and I started thinking about, man, that's what I want for people that don't know Christ. I want them to go from red to green. If you're here today and you don't know Christ and you don't even know why you came, somebody told you they'd buy you a meal, you'd meet somebody cute, something like that, and you just kind of showed up here. I mean, I make no apologies that I hope you will give your life to Christ, if not today, eventually, because I lived 19 years of my life on red, and when I turned from red to green, when I turned from saying no to Christ to saying yes to Christ, He changed my life. He's still changing my life, and what Jesus did for me, I want Jesus to do that for every single person in the world. I'm passionate about Jesus and how He changed my life. And there's some people on every campus that would say the same. I want to be a church that when it comes to reaching people far from God, that we don't, listen, we're not on red. We're on green. Churches that are on red say things like, well, it's too big, or I don't know everybody, or I want to go, we all love each other, which that's true. I've worked in some of those churches. They don't even like each other, but that's the things they say. See, I want to go from red to green. And I thought about this when I was watching, God help me, the Clemson, South Carolina game last week on TV. Over 80,000 people at Willie Bryce hanging out, cheering. They'd had a beer 12. They were having a good time, right? And you know what? I'll bet you that nobody, when they got to Williams Bryce, people walked in, sat down, and said, you know what, honey? This is too big. There are too many people. I've been here 3 times, and Steve Spurrier has never came and talked to me personally, and I feel like I want to know the coach. Y'all see where I'm going with this? Nobody said that. The team on the field was doing something. The team on the field was winning. And most of the 80,000 people were there celebrating the team on the field, which, by the way, this time next year will not impact your life whatsoever. Why is it that we can have 80,000 people celebrating a football field, but we can't have over 100,000 people celebrating the fact of the resurrection of Jesus Christ? See, I think what some people in our state is a vision bigger than your favorite college football team. Amen. And so I always want to be a church that says when it comes to reaching people far from God, we're going to be on green. I want to be a person that when it comes to Jesus Christ working in my life, and this is true for every person that knows Christ, there's probably an area or some areas in your life that are on red. Jesus, don't touch my money. Jesus, don't touch how I feel or think about sex. Jesus, don't, I know I need to forgive that person, but I'm going to continue to be mad at that person. So Jesus, don't touch that. And we need to go to green because listen, when we're on red, the activity of God can be all around us, but sometimes it won't happen to us, and it's not God's fault. It's our fault because we haven't been obedient to do what He said. But when we go from red to green, it begins to unleash the activity of God, not around us, but in us, and we can begin to experience God in a way that we've never experienced Him before. And it's when we go from red to green. Now, the particular area I want to talk to all of our campuses about today in regards to going to red to green is you and I being willing to step outside of our comfort zone, just like Jesus stepped out of His comfort zone. We celebrate that at Christmas when God became man. That we'll get outside of our comfort zone and do whatever it takes, not to just tell people, like Will stop telling me, but we'll be willing to take people to a Christmas service in 2 weeks. 2 weekends from this weekend, I'm asking every person in here, when you're coaster, to go from red to green. And just listen. Tell God, I'm available. I'm telling you, this year's Christmas service, will be the best we've ever had. We went back to Israel because you guys love the Easter so much. We went back for Christmas. We filmed in one location. I'm not sure a film crew has ever been to that location. You're going to see the Christmas story unfold in a way that you've never seen the Christmas story. And I'll tell you, if you will listen, let's not just tell people about the service. Let's take them here and watch Jesus do what only Jesus can do. I want to show you how this works out, because I want Jesus to change our state, our nation, and our world. I want him to change all of us. And listen, the closer we get to Jesus, the more our hearts are connected with things that are connected to his heart. And he really does care about people far from God. If you brought a Bible with you today, I want you to go with me to Matthew chapter 2. Matthew chapter 2 talks about a story. And even if you're from an unchurched background or you're somewhat unfamiliar with the Bible or whatever, you've heard or seen something having to do with this story. How many of you have a nativity scene in your house, or you've seen? Okay, yeah, lots of us have nativity scenes. There's some common characters in the nativity scene. There's baby Jesus. There's Mary. There's Joseph. There's the camel and the donkey. I saw one with a cat. I'm not sure that Satan was there, but anyway. And then you got the shepherds, and then the other group of people there, other than the shepherds, are the wise men, which theologically, I'm just going to kind of go ahead and tell you this is wrong. The shepherds and the wise men were not there together. The shepherds showed up the wise men showed up somewhere between 6 months to 2 years after the shepherds were there. I'm not saying you need to go home and burn up your nativity scene. I'm just saying that's not the way it happened. But we see something in the wise men that happened that I believe, listen, if we will wrap our minds around what Jesus did in this story, I believe it can change us. I believe it can change the people around us. And I really am one of those people that believe it could change the world. 3 words I want us to focus on here, all right? The first one is connection. Connection. Going back to my Fogo trip, the reason I went to Fogo with Will is not because I drove down the road and he had a sign on him that said, go to Fogo or go to hell. I didn't go, man, I need to go to Fogo because I don't want to go to hell. I didn't go to Fogo with Will because he forwarded me 72 emails a day and said, if you love Jesus, forward this to at least 100 people or you don't love Jesus. People that do that should have their computers taken away from them and beaten with a cane pole. It's just my feeling. I didn't go to Fogo because Will kept leaving me random notes. I went to Fogo with Will because I was connected with him. I already had a relationship with him, and he said, I want you to go with me, and I'm going to take you there. That's the reason. And at first, I wasn't interested, but now, today, I'm going to tell over 25,000 people about Fogo de Show. Had somebody hit me up on social media and said, I checked it out online, and now I want to go. See, that's how it works. I'm an evangelist for Fogo, but in Jesus. All right, here we go. Let's pick it up in Matthew chapter 2, verse 1, start reading. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem, it's important, we'll come back to that, in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem. Now, it took me a long time to realize that from the east, I didn't know where that was. I was like, east of what? But in doing the research, most scholars believe that the Magi came from what we now know as modern-day Iran, Iraq. They called it Persia in those days, and so Magi would have came from Persia to Jerusalem, and then ultimately to Bethlehem. Now, this is what's interesting, verse 2. And ask, where's the one who has been born King of the Jews? Now, this gets weird. We saw his star when it rose, and have come to worship him. Saw his star. Historians and scholars agree that when they say saw his star, that these magi were doing what the Old Testament would have referred to as sin. They were studying astronomy, or astrology. They were looking at this, they were getting their horoscope, right? They believed in superstition. They believed in the supernatural. They just didn't know the God that's over all of the supernatural. And they were doing, God specifically says in the Old Testament, he had told the people of the Israelites, hey, don't do this. Don't worship the stars. These people were worshiping the stars. And as they were worshiping the stars, God didn't show up and go, hey, y'all need to knock it off. Sick and tired of this star worship. I'm cleaning house. Go to your room. Deal with you later. God said, you know what? They're looking at the stars. I'll just use where they are and what they're doing and bring them to where they need to be. Amen. See, for too long, the church told people they needed to change their behavior before they showed up here. Yeah. But God didn't try to change their behavior. God was concerned with changing their heart. And he didn't want to tell them to change without giving them a reason to change. And he knew they would not have a reason to change until they met Jesus, who would ultimately do the changing inside of them. And God wanted to connect with them. He didn't want to condemn them. He didn't want to push them down. He didn't want to push them away. God cared about them so much that he put a star in the sky and said, you know what? I'm going to use what you're doing. Isn't it funny that God can use anything to get our attention? I'm going to use what you're doing to connect with you, to bring you from where you are to where you need to be. God didn't say, change. God said, I love you so much, I'm going to connect with you so that one day you can change when you meet Jesus. That's the kind of God we serve. Now, some people are here going, oh my gosh, Perry, I wish he would send a star to my friend or my family member. I know somebody in my life, a friend or a family member or a coworker or a cousin or a son or a daughter. I know somebody that doesn't know Christ, and I wish he would just send them a star. Well, he has. It's you. Amen. You're the star. You're who he wants to use to connect them to Christ. None of us in this room have an accidental relationship with anyone on the planet. And if you know Christ and somebody doesn't know Christ, the only reason that God put you in their life was so they could know Christ. Because listen, eternity is way too long to get it wrong. And if we really do believe in heaven, and we really do believe in hell, and we really do believe that everybody spends eternity somewhere, we've got to wrap our minds and our hearts around the fact that God has put us in the lives of people to connect, not to condemn them, but to connect them to Christ. So everybody here on every campus, as I'm saying that, if people are popping in your mind that you know that are far from God, family members, friends, relatives, co-workers, people are popping in your mind, that's the Holy Spirit of God speaking to you. Amen. Telling you that's who you need to bring to church for Christmas. That's not the devil. That is God asking you to be a connector. He's not asking you to be weird. He's not asking you to forward them. He's not asking an email. He's asking you, would you simply say, you know what, God? I'm going to go green for the next 2 weeks. And if you'll open the door, God, I will go through it, and I won't just tell this person about a church service, but I'll take them to a place where they can meet you. Amen. Connection. You and I have connections with these people. Number 2, challenge. Will had to go through challenges to get me to Fogo. First of all, it's a 2-hour drive. Second of all, we hit Atlanta traffic. I've met people before that told me, well, you know, Pastor, I've never cussed. Well, it's because you've never sat in Atlanta traffic. Right? Because it makes St. Peter cuss. Well, he cussed anyway. I get a better example. But and if you don't say it, you'll think it. That's just as bad, all right? Will went through the challenge to get me to where he wanted me to go. He went through, and listen, he paid for it. That's when I knew, man, it's on. This guy really wants me. I mean, he paid for it. Now, I thought about that in reference to the challenges that the Magi or the wise men had to go through to make it to a place where they could see Jesus. There were geographical challenges. To go from Persia to Israel, they didn't go hop on a Delta flight and fly over. I mean, it was a long journey. Geographically, they were pretty far away from Jesus, but God met them there. Spiritually, they were far away from God as they were doing something that God had already said in His Word earlier that they were not supposed to do, but they didn't know. They were just doing what they had always known. They were far from God emotionally, but God walked with them through all of their challenges and brought them from where they were to where they needed to be. And then when they got almost to Jesus, they faced religious challenges. Watch this. This is really interesting. The Bible says when King Herod heard this, when they showed up and said, "Where's the one born King of the Jews?" he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. "In Bethlehem in Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." Now I want to pause right here just to point out an incredible point. Bethlehem is 6 miles away from Jerusalem. You can stand in Jerusalem and see Bethlehem. I mean, I've stood in Jerusalem. I've seen Bethlehem from Jerusalem. Jerusalem was the epicenter of religious activity. That's where the priests were. That's where the scribes were. That's where this Bible study took place. But Jesus was born in Bethlehem. And the people that were most active in religion are the very ones that missed Jesus showing up. We should never confuse spiritual activity for spiritual maturity, because these people, these magi, could have gotten bogged down in Jerusalem because they focused on what these people were focused on, and they were focused on knowing about the Messiah, but they didn't know the Messiah. You know, I was just out at the Dream Center speaking for Pastor Matthew Barnett, and when we were leaving in the airport, we saw George Costanza from Seinfeld. Y'all remember Seinfeld? We saw George. He came up about my waist, cute little guy. Anyway, he was in line, and everybody's like, "Oh, that's George Costanza. That's George." So a bunch of people went and got their picture taken with him and leaned in, and it was fun. Hey, you know, and he kind of kept walking down through the airport. Now, if you were to walk up to George Costanza sometime today and say, "Hey, man, heard you met my boy Perry," he'd be like, "Who?" See, I met him. I've been around him, but I don't know him. And that's where these religious leaders were. They knew about Jesus, but they never knew Jesus. The Bible continues to say, "Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, 'Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me so that I too may go and worship him.'" That was a lie. He didn't want to worship him. He wanted to kill him. That's another sermon for another time. After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen, when it rose, went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. Now, this puzzled me. God kept using the star to lead the Magi where they needed to be. God, once again, was not concerned about their behavior. He was concerned about their heart, and He walked with them patiently through their journey. Now, have you ever been impatient with people? Like, have you ever said in your mind, if that person does that, one more time, right? Like, I got behind a couponer the other day at the store, and you might be a couponer, bless your heart. God have mercy on your soul for pulling out your coupon. I mean, I wanted to tell this lady, it's always a lady, I'm not stereotyping, I'm just saying, and I wanted to tell her, "Ma'am, I'll give you $20 if you'll just leave. In fact, why don't you let me pay for your groceries?" Or have you ever been impatient with your kids? Huh? You ever told your kids, "Ask me one more time. Ask me one more time"? I did that one time. My dad said, "Ask me one more time." I was like, all right. That's the last time I ever did that. In fact, I don't remember much after that. But sometimes we're impatient with people on their spiritual journey. Like, I've preached messages like this before, and I know what some of you are thinking. "Oh, okay, here we go, bring them." And you bring them, And like you try, and they go, well, I might do that. I might go. Then you lied to them and told them you were taking them to Walmart and you brought them to church, which is way better, by the way. And you got them here, and then the gospel was presented, and, I said, raise your hand or stand up. And you're supposed to have your eyes closed, but you're kind of doing this number right here, kind of looking with your eye, kind of looking all around. And they don't stand up, and you're so mad. After the service, you wanted to go, well, go to hell. Just go to hell then, fine. Fry like bacon, but you can't do that. It was a spiritual journey for these men. It took time. We need to be as patient with other people as God was with us. Let me ask you this question. How patient was he with you? He was really patient with me. 2 Peter 3:9 says he's patient. Romans 2 says it's his kindness that leads us to repentance. And do you know that everybody that you know has problems, pains, and struggles that you know nothing about? You can't judge someone based on their highlight reel, whether it's good or bad. I have a friend of mine, he said, he's telling a story one time about how he had his 2 kids under 3, they're on an airplane. If you've ever taken a kid under the age of 3 or 4 on an airplane, you know when they get on the airplane, that's when they decide to freak out. I don't know what happens, but there's a universal kid freak out rule on the airplane. And he said his 2 kids lost their minds. They're on a cross-country flight. They're under 3. Him and his wife are kind of juggling back and forth, trying to put the bottle in the mouth, trying to feed the babies, trying to, dirty diapers everywhere. And a guy in front of him looked around and said, so you got 2 kids? And my friend said, yes, we have 2 kids. And he said, man, me and my wife would give anything to have 2 kids. My friend said, so you don't have kids? He said, no, we have 5 kids, and we'd give anything to have 2 kids. There are some people that really are going through tough stuff, though. They are, maybe you know some people that are dealing with some tough things. Maybe you're having a tough time in a relationship right now. And I hadn't said this all the other services, the devil will always try to destroy a relationship when he knows you're close to leading someone to Christ or getting them to the place where they're going to hear the gospel. So any relational tension you got going on in your life, I'd pay attention to that. Don't give up on people that God puts on your heart, because he put them on your heart. It wasn't by accident or coincidence. It was by providence that he wants you to be the star, the connector, to go from red to green and say, God, I won't just tell them about a service, but I'll take them to one so they can hear the gospel. Right? The last word I want us to focus on is the word change. Change. How many people on our campuses, I need you to be honest, you're in church, would change at least one thing about your physical appearance if you could? Okay? If you don't have your hand raised, you're a liar. I like myself as I am. I said it last week, you can't smoke weed, all right? I've told you before that I would change the fact that I have slabs on my side. Some people have abs, I have slabs. I've got it's horrible. That's why I wear black all the time. It makes me look slim. But I noticed something the other day I would change about myself. I saw a picture of I was in a group photo, and you know how it is when you look at a group photo, the first thing you look at is yourself, and if you don't look good, the whole photo don't look good. So I looked at myself, and I was mortified. Because my grandfather had what I call a gobbler. Y'all know what I'm talking about? It's like a piece of skin that went from here to here, and it flapped back and forth. I mean, he could play a song with it, and then my daddy had it. Like he'd turn and like if you were real close, it would smack you in the face and knock you down. And I noticed the way I had my head turned that a gobbler was forming. And I was like, God help me. God help me. Help me. I went to my wife. I was like, you're a doctor. Fix it. Fix it. I don't care what you got to do. I would change that about me. I would change some things about this world, wouldn't you? I would change the fact that Fruity Pebbles are bad for you, broccoli's good for you. I'd change that. I would change the fact that the person that invented the character Dora the Explorer was ever born. Pick a language, chick, you confuse me, all right? I would change some things. But there's some things about this world that bother me. In fact, let me back up. There's some things that bother me about me that I can't seem to change. Like sometimes I have just evil thoughts. I do. Like wicked, like I'll think about it for a few minutes and then I go, where did that come from? And don't judge me because you do too. In fact, what if I told you, hey, we've been able to capture all of your thoughts and we're going to show your thoughts on this screen from this past week and I want everybody to hang out and watch. Everybody be like, huh, boom! I would change that about me. I would change the fact that sometimes I do some things that I don't want to do. I would change some things about the world. Like it bothers me that I read a study the other day that said the over 50% of the babies born to women under 30 are being born into single mom homes because the daddies took off. See, I would change that. I would change the fact that marriages are dissolving in our country faster than they've ever dissolved. I would change the fact that there are over 27 million people in the world captured in what's called the sex slave trade. I would change the fact that there are people literally dealing with worry and anxiety and fear and depression. And I would change the fact that Americans are more addicted to illegal and legal drugs than ever in our nation's history. I would change the fact that families fall apart. I would change these things. I would change the fact that people feel like they don't have any hope. See, I would change all those things. And you would too, because those things change in your life and those things change in our world. This world is a better place. But you know what I've discovered? I can't change it. No matter how hard I try, I can't change me and I can't seem to change the world. But I know someone who can. Because he's done it in my life, and he's done it for the past 2,000 years, and he'll keep doing it for all eternity. I believe that Jesus Christ can change the world for the better. I see this in this story. Watch this. In this verse 10, when they saw the star, they were overjoyed. So they saw the star. They looked at the star again. Now watch this. Verse 11. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary. They bowed down and worshiped him. I want to stop and just point out something. In most of our nativity scenes, there are 3 wise men. But there weren't just 3 wise men. In fact, most of the research that I did seemed to indicate that there were 12 wise men. Isn't that interesting? 12 wise men, 12 tribes of Israel, 12 disciples, 12. The number 12 was very important in the life of Jesus, even at his birth. But with 12 wise men came a huge caravan. There were so many people that when they rolled into town, it caused a disturbance. Like people were like, what are all those people doing here? These were men of affluence. They were very rich. They were very wealthy. And I want you to watch what these rich, wealthy, powerful, influential men do the minute they meet Jesus. Watch this. And worshiped him. See, their whole life had been spent worshiping themselves. Then they worshiped Jesus, and watch. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. These men, all their life, had been takers. And when they meet Jesus, they became givers. A person that is obsessed with Jesus will never be obsessed with themselves. And that's hard for me sometimes. But these men became givers. And then this last verse, this is the one that got me. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, stop. How did they get to Jesus? God led them through a what? Now he's leading them through a dream. God led them through the star until they met Jesus. And when they met Jesus, they stopped looking at the star and they started actually listening to God. That's strong. See, God didn't try to change their behavior. He changed their heart when they met Jesus and they started being led a different way. And don't miss this. They returned to their country by another route. They didn't go back the way they came. See, when we meet Jesus, we don't go back the way we came. We can't meet Jesus and stay the same. Jesus always changes the route in our life. And that's why I believe that there is no form of government that's going to bring the change that the world needs. I believe it's the gospel, because I've seen the gospel work. The gospel sets addicts free, and the gospel helps the excluded become included, and the gospel helps the lost get found, and the gospel helps found people get grown up, and the gospel gives people a cause to live for, and the gospel gives people a hope in heaven, and the gospel gives people a future they can live for, and the gospel is what holds families together. And the gospel is what the church has been called to proclaim, and it happens when we go from red to green saying, God, I will not give up on the gospel. I believe that Jesus Christ wants to change this state, change this nation, change this world, but it happens as he changes us. As we go, you know what, God? I'm going to go from red to green. There are people in this room on every campus. Somebody didn't give up on you. Somebody invited you to this church more than once. And every time they did, you'd say, well, I might go, which meant I'm not going. But then they bribed you, they took you, they tricked you, and you came, and maybe you didn't receive Christ the first time, but eventually you received Christ. And you're not the person that maybe you need to be. You're not the person you used to be. You've received Jesus at NewSpring. If I just told your story, if that was your story, somebody kept inviting you here, you kept coming, you met Christ here, and he's continuing to change your life, would you do me a favor right now on every campus and stand to your feet? I just want you to stand up. I just want you to stand up and remain standing. I just want you to stand up and remain standing. Everybody, even here in the balcony in Anderson, on all of our portable campuses, I want you to stand up. Somebody kept inviting you. Over 10,000 people have received Christ at NewSpring this year. Here's the reason I wanted them to stand. Every one of these people have a name. And every one of their names matters to God. Every number has a name. Every name has a story. Every story matters to God. But for every person that's standing, there's over 10,000 in our state that need to stand. And they will as we go green. You may be seated. Would you bow with me on all our campuses for a time of prayer? Here's what I want you to do right now on every campus. If God spoke to you in this message, if there's somebody that God laid on your heart, or some people that God laid on your heart, on your coaster that you had on the green side, I want you to write down their name, or I want you to write down their names in that blank. And I want you to do it right now. Just do it right now. Just do it right now. This is the invitation today. I want you to just do it right now. You just write down their name. Just write down their name. I'll write down their names. On the red side, it said, I will not give up on. In other words, I'm not going to go red. I'm going to go green. I'm taking these people to a Christmas service. I cannot promise you that they'll get saved there, but I'm going to promise you that people are going to get saved there. And if they don't meet Christ, I can promise you they're going to be one step closer to him. I can promise you that. I can promise you that, because the gospel is going to be presented in a really creative way. I want you to put that coaster where you can see it every day this week. On every one of our campuses, I know that God spoke to some people's hearts today. I know God spoke to your heart, and maybe the person that you've written down, you need someone to pray with you or for you today about that person. I know that maybe you're here today and there might be an issue that your life is on red. You're a Christian, but you haven't surrendered an area to your life, and God spoke to you today and said you need to hand that over. Maybe you're here today and you don't even know Christ. You've never gone from red to green and said, yes, Jesus, I receive you into my life. If that's you, in just a second, I'm going to ask everybody on every campus to stand. But if God spoke to you and you need someone to pray with you or for you about something he said to you in the service today, as we stand, I just want you to step out of your aisle and I want you to walk out the back door of your campus. Outside that back door, there are staff members and volunteers that want to pray with you and for you about what God said to you We're here so you don't have to do life alone. So on all of our campuses right now, could we stand for closing prayer? But as we're standing, if God spoke to you and you need someone to pray with you or for you about something he said to you, I want you to step out of your aisle. I don't want you to walk out the back door. I want you to go right now. Dozens of people are moving here in Anderson. So in Greenville and Spartanburg, Florence, Columbia, and Charleston, Myrtle Beach, all of our campuses, if you need to go, you just go. Spartanburg, you just go. Greenwood, you just go. If God spoke to you, Perry, I need the courage to be able to bring someone to church. I need the courage to talk to somebody about this. Hey, this is scary. I know it's scary. I want to pray for my cousin. I want to pray for my coworkers. Perry, I've got an issue where I'm on red and God spoke to me and I need to let this go. Perry, I need to ask Christ in my life. Today in our services, we've had people respond and ask Christ in their life. If you need to do that, you go right now. Father, thank you all day. All day, God, you've drawn people to you. My prayer, God, is that every one of us will walk out of this room with a heart that's connected with your heart. And when it comes to people far from God, that we will go green. We will say, God, I'm here, I'm available, use me, and I'll do whatever it takes to get people to a place where they can see you and you can bring about the change that they so desperately need. We love you, Jesus, and all God's people said. Y'all have a great week. We'll see you next Sunday.